See, what we're trying to do is to play down the toy part of the model and bring forward the model parts of the toy. How to bring character to these old US type boxcars. Before the 40-foot boxcar became standard, these were quite common in the US, and this is a reefer type. They'd be used for everything from meat to vegetables and fruit and so on. And they have nice detail, and they look great if you have a Wild West type themed layout. You don't seem to get enough people modeling, but these are pretty fun to bring life to them, to bring character to them, because there's enough detail in there to get them going. So they have a roof walk on the top, some hatches, a metal roof, and a classic American boxcar type end. They also have a walkway on the top. The first thing I would do is to de-highlight that walkway, and I would usually paint the top. We're aiming for something to give character on the layout. This is probably a fantasy. Maybe it isn't, but I'm just assuming it is. A lot of these cars tend to be. They usually had a red oxide roof and red oxide ends. So it will be a matter of paint. First thing I'll do is I will spray paint the two ends and the top, and I will remove the wheels, and I'll also spray paint the trucks. Basically, it's just a matter of masking out the advertising billboard sides. So we'll do that first. So what I've done here is I've spray painted the ends in off the counter hardware store paint red primer. I did it to the tops as well. Taken the black out of the walkway, and it's painted the brake wheel the same color, which is black, and I've done the same to the trucks and the underneath. Left the sides as it is. Now you'll notice that there is yellow flecking on the top. This is adding character to cheap models to making them look less like toys. So when they sit on the railroad layout, they look less toy-like. We're not trying to win awards here for super detailing. We're not trying to win model railroaders, or the NMRA's model of the year. We're here to add character to toys, basically, so they look less like toys. So what I've done is holding a spray can of yellow about a meter away, 3 feet, and spraying it so it creates a flecking design, so as to suggest that the roof has been weathered by the hot sun of the American West, or something similar. Now, that will change when we add the contrast paint over it. It will tone down the yellow, but it will create a much more naturalistic effect. But the important thing is, don't be afraid that I don't know if you can see it, it's just dots. This is from holding the spray can. Now, this is just off-the-shelf hardware store rattle cans, spray cans. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some character. This is the word I'm using. And don't be afraid if you spill a little of the red oxide paint on the side. This is, again, we're not here to win awards. And this is tremendously satisfying as well. This is a very satisfying thing, to take an inexpensive, cheap model and give it some character. And we're not here to do high-end weathering. We are here to do character, to bring it up to be something more than a toy. You can see also I've spray painted, after masking the steps, the red oxide color too. All that remains of the yellow is the billboard sides. People will often run a dark wash in here, usually a dark black or a dark brown. That's your preference. I prefer to use a darker shade of yellow, and that's always been the rule for me with doing this kind of thing. If it's a light blue, put a contrast paint or a speed paint on top that is dark blue. If it is a light green, dark green, and if it's yellow, basically an orange, because it brings out the depth without looking like there's big dark gaps between them, and it creates more of a yellow effect in shadow than it does a dark, severe line between the two. So I'm going to use for the roof the Citadel Games Workshop paints of Gorgunta for the contrast paint. The same one I used to add the teak effect to those LNER coaches that I did in a video recently. And for the sides, I'm going to use speed paint, which is also a very similar, it's basically the same thing as Games Workshop contrast paint, a zealot yellow, which is almost like a red orange. So you'll see what happens. These are not the same. Contrast paints and speed paints are not the same as washes or stains. They are basically paints that have a very dense molecule that floats inside a binder that is very affected by gravity, and they will flow into where any gaps they can find, but they will also add a tonal color on top of it. Now we're going to use our trusty Q-tips, cotton buds, to remove it around places like where the data detail is, just like you saw me do on the LNE or T coaches. What we do is and we keep our Tamiya X20A acrylic thinner handy just in case it goes on too thick. Give this guy a good shake. One of the reasons I really like the Army Painter versions is because they have the steel ball bearing in them to actually help you mix it like a rattle can. So you get a good mix, where in the contrast paints it's just, vibration alone. So I just use one of these as a paint tilnid, and I pour a few drops in. And you can see it's almost like it's translucent. And then painting sideways like this, you can see how it is toning down the yellow, less of a fluorescent yellow, and already you can see the binder and the dense molecules of the paint are falling into the grooves between the woodwork. You see that? But yet, the beauty of contrast paint is we haven't lost this decal or the over thing. We just brought out the details. This is the difference between stains and contrast paints. You're adding a layer of paint that will not only, but for the most part, find its way into details. Look at the door now, completely different. I tend to put a bit more around where there's details, so like the doors, like the ladders and so on, any hatches, and that'll become apparent why I do that in a minute. Again, it's not a hard science. We're not trying to be super clever here. Now I tend to just pile it on thick at the tops like this, and catching in grooves as well, and at the bottom. Doesn't harm doing the steps. The next stage is, if you say to yourself, it looks like some of it is too thick on the lettering, you can either clean off your brush and then drain it and do it, old watercolor technique, painter's technique, or you can use the Q-tip to gently roll it away. I don't really see anywhere on this it needs it, so we'll just do it there. I'll just give you an example. You see, you just pick up a bit on the Q-tip. You wanted to bring this product box out, you can do that. You can be quite precise about it and really save that graphic if you wanted, or this text on the company logo, supreme in flavor. Ventilator, refrigerator could do with a bit of a clarity. There you go. So the next thing you do is, before it dries, is you turn this upside down like that, and you let the paint dry upside down. The reason for that is the contrast paint will then begin its journey down the bottom of the model, so which is really the top of the model, and pool underneath ledges. Remember, I had to artificially create these it will start pooling in the underneaths of the hatches, the underneaths of the lid, and so on. And what happens then is the shadow is then correctly projected on the underside of the detail, such as like the rungs on the ladder and so on. So we let that dry there, and I'll do the other side too off camera. So here we are after the Army Painter Zealot Yellow has dried, and you can see that the grooves in the boxcar wood is very pronounced now. There is a naturalistic looking shadow underneath the rungs on the ladders on the side, and it's popped out the details. We can do a little bit more work with these if you want to bring them out. I think I will with some brown later, and I'll do the same with the rungs on the ladder. And you can see on the other side too. So we want the character of the original lettering to show through. We want the character of the grooves in the boxcar and the details like the ladder. I mean, look how much that sticks out now. You think it was wire. And the various hatches and so on to remain. So we keep the best of what makes the boxcar interesting and charming, its advertising billboard side, without obscuring it or causing any problems. Now the roof and the ends, on the other hand, are a different matter. We can go to town here. So again, the rule of a darker shade for a lighter shade. The contrast paint Gorgonzola I'm going to use here for a similar process. I'm going to do the sides first. So let me take care of them. And it's the same thing, give the paint a good shake. This tends to be a bit thicker, so you might need put that in there to keep it safe, because they will always fall over. You'll need a bit more paint on this one, just to bring out that detail. Here, you can see there better, okay? So I'm going to get the Gorgonzola, and then don't be afraid if you spill it on the fronts or anything else. You're going down this, again, make sure you're getting the paint in the grooves there. Everything is well flooded, so it's less red oxide. Now remember, as oxides age, they start out as an orangey color and then they go to a dark brown color, and this is why I painted the top in both red oxide and flecked it in yellow, to create that effect of the rust happening randomly in different areas. And I'll do the Gorgonzola on the other end now. This is where the wheel and everything is. Now you can see it's very red oxide. It's very, that burnt sienna color. So we'll go and give it this guy here, especially in around the brake wheel. If you feel like you've gone to town, just get your, I think I've gone a bit too hard on the steps on the ladder. So just go in there and just take it out with your Q-tip, wherever you feel you might have overdone it a little bit. But you're surprised it's kind of hard to overdo it, because a lot of this paint tends to kind of evaporate. So that's the two ends done. Now we can have fun on the roof. I enjoy this part the most. I go underneath the walkway, because that usually gets missed by the spray can or doesn't get enough of the same coating. The paint will pool in there anyway, and I do the same here. I want more of the orange to show through, and I want these raised sections on the roof to not lose their depth. You see, the simulated elements of rust from the flecking with the yellow paint on the top shows through. I do not want to lose that at all. And same here. Now the walkway on the roof, okay, it's a bit different, because I want that to stand out, but not the way it was originally in that awful black plastic. This is made of wood, okay? This is made of wood in real life, and this is made of sheet steel. They will have a different effect. So I'm not going to put the dark brown contrast paint on top of that, because I want this to look different. This is wood, this is steel. they won't weather the same. Go look at the old photograph. You don't believe me. If you feel that some of these have lost a bit of their... And again, if you go down, you see I spilled a bit on the side here, but don't be worried about it. We have the Q-tips to take care of that. Again, it's not we're not engineering here. You know, this is like, consider what's ever left over as a stain from something that naturally occurs. Yeah, that side isn't too bad. A little bit of a spill over here, overspill here, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Now we do the same again. We turn this guy upside down, and that's another good reason why we haven't painted this. We want the paint to flow underneath, radiate out towards the edge, so it's lighter here. So I'll be resting him like this while he's drying. Here's the roof done, and you can see how it's splotched, and the paint has pooled in specific areas, the contrast paint. Don't be worried by the fact that that's not even. This is what happens in real life. But more importantly, you can see these ribs on top of them. They really stand out now. And because we didn't do the walk here, it's a weathered wood look. It looks like weathered wood, steel wood. We've now separated. It was black plastic before with yellow plastic. Look what we have now. The hatches stand out, the ribbing stands out. The ends, the same thing. Let me see if I can get this in the light better. You can see on the ends there, there's a slight gloss you'll notice in there. Don't worry about that. We're going to hit this with varnish. The contrast paint tends to gloss when it's a bit thick. You can see it in there. That's no problem. We're going to be painting over that. Now what I like to do now is to get a red oxide brush paint. Just the basic, you know, what you can get for your any hobby thing. I will pick out certain things. I'll show you. I'll get the brush out, and it's just really for doing a little some highlights. So, for instance, the brake wheel. Just if we do just a slight painting of that, just a touch on it. Just a touch on it. It brings that out. See? There. See? Same with the ladder, almost like a dry brushing technique. Again, don't worry if you miss, the whole thing is supposed to be rusted. The wheel, this piece here, the ladder leading down and the brake piping has been picked out, as well as the step on the roof. Now you don't have to do it everywhere, you can do it on parts of the roof. So occasionally I'll do it on some of the ribs, because this is what happens, they rust differently. Remember, dark rust is just to add a little bit of definition. And on the hatches, my brush it needs a bit of a point on it to do this. It's standing out against the lower coat, but enough to give it distinction. So you can do the same with the rivets on the end. And don't forget the top part of the brake wheel. So when you're looking at it from above and someone's admiring your layout, they will see, oh, it's such a beautifully detailed boxcar, and you're going, no, it's actually a toy. I've just brought the character out in it with this painting on the ladder coming down on the side. But we haven't really properly brought out the hinges on here. You see, we brought out the detail on the door better. And if you make a mistake, it's your fingers for. Okay, and now I'll do the same on the trucks. You could, you know, if you want to replace these trucks, you can, with like KD ones or some other Intermountain or something. The same with the wheels. I'm just doing this now for, you see, it's one of the things. I used to read those American and British magazines, but the Americans are the worst in this regard, where they would do upgrades on models, and you'd nearly spend, on the parts to upgrade the kit, something like this, the parts and the paints and the respray and the work involved, you might as well hire a professional, or I know there's a satisfaction in doing it yourself, but you might as well, you know, hire someone else to do it, or buy an expensive one. What's the point in buying a cheap one and to upgrade it if you're going to spend so much money on it? And then again, you know, bring the 3-foot rule or the 1 meter rule. I'm going to do it on the top here randomly. I'm not going to do it in one straight line, because I want some parts to see water in real life pool here, especially in that corner here, so don't be afraid to bleed the corner with the red oxide. So it's like this car's been on the road for years, traveling all over the US, maybe from Florida up to Boston or somewhere. I'm really happy how this is coming out now. The trucks have a bit of definition in them they didn't have before. I don't bother with the bottom, no one sees it. And so we're getting close to finishing now. I want to do it. Okay, now let's hit it with the marked varnish and we'll go look at it on the layout. And here we have the finished model. Before I put it on the track, I just want to show you the planking now stands out from 6 feet. The other side of the layout, the planking on the yellow is very visible. So what we set out to do here was to take a toy from a train set and to make it look less like a toy without doing a lot of work. So showing the potential of how you can take something that's toy-like and turn it into something that looks really great on your layout. I love the roof, especially how that came out. There's different staining on the sheet steel. The wooden walkway pronounced. Remember how it had a black plastic there before? It's much nicer now. The details stand out on the side, as simple as they are. Very happy with the end. The way the wheels and the ladders on the end came out on the bulkheads on both sides. So I think I probably paid $1 for this or something years ago, and maybe even less. And the character is preserved. The wonderful advertising board. The latches and the details stand out. The planking, the footsteps and the ladder stand out. The roof looks great. And all I did was paint the trucks. You can do whatever you want. You can put your steel wheels on, your KD couplers. It's up to you. Also, don't be put off by the concept that you have to completely upgrade your model in one go. You can do this, and I'll put it on the layout looking this way, then say I'll now change the trucks and put steel wheels and KD couplers on. So don't think you have to do things in one go. As Chris Ellis used to say in Model Trains International, a piece of rolling stock on the layout is worth 1,000 ones that are sitting in a box somewhere.